Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
So I've been cleaning up my yard. So all the last year's vegetables are all pulled out. The soil is open. I've added some manure, some fertilizer, kind of getting the soils ready. I pulled last year's annual flowers. They're coming out. Some of the perennials like peonies and your echinaceas, some of these other perennial great summer blooming flowers, I've cut back. So cleanup. And so I just thought I'd touch on real quick. What happens when a plant goes dormant? What are they doing underneath the ground? This is basic gardening 101, but a lot of these spring blooming plants, it takes tremendous amounts of energy for forsythia. That's one of the first plants, shrubs, to bloom golden yellow in spring. So usually sometime in March, they're gonna ignite with new growth, new flowers. They always flower first, then get their foliage. It takes a lot of energy to pull that off. Well, some of these plants need to rest in between bloom cycles. This can be hard to you folks from tropical climates. You're used to green. I want it to bloom all year round. I can't believe they take a rest. Well, you can't grow lilac or for Rose of Sharon's or forsythia or peonies in a tropical climate. They like to grow in this 4-season climate. They need a rest period. They need short days, cold nights. They're in stasis. They're growing, but they're not growing very quickly. They're just kind of taking a break, getting their energy ready, and then when they take off in spring, they just ignite with new growth. Now, perennial and annual, what's the difference? And this gets my new customers new to the area. It confuses them some. Number one that confuses them is a red fountain grass. It grows so well in Phoenix, so great in the Palm Springs, the tropical climates. This beautiful red grass, great plumes, gets about hip high, looks great in the landscape, looks great in containers, raised beds, but it's an annual. It does not take the cold. So the top died back like all the other perennial grasses. It died back, but the roots are actually dying now too. So this cold is really permeated and killing off every square inch of this plant. Whereas pampas grass, deer grass, fescues, zebra grass, these are all perennials. They've got the same top growth is kind of brown and straw colored, but the roots are just resting. They're taking the cold. They're fine. They get plenty of antifreeze to protect them. They're going to come back, but they need to rest underneath before they start erupting with brand new growth and then covered in plumes. So if you want to know the difference, take an irrigation flag or a popsicle stick, something where you can mark that plant. Just kind of go, oh, there was a plant here. There's a plant here. There's a plant there. And the ones that come back, those are the perennials. The ones that just never seem to come back from the ground, those were annuals from last year. That can happen with grasses. It can be flowering plants, shrubs. So bougainvillea, that's a famous plant down in Phoenix. That is a hardcore annual here. It will not come back unless you bring it indoors or you cheat it some way or have a greenhouse. But out in the landscape, that is not going to come back. Whereas honeysuckle, it will. Honeysuckle needs to rest a bit. So you see it looks a little rough right now. It's still got some foliage, no flowers really, but honeysuckle is this very fast growing vine that's very easy to care for. Great plant for here. Every yard needs at least one. I mean, honeysuckle is just so robust here. That's the one where as a kid used to pull out the stamen, the stem inside the flower and suck the nectar. It smells very fragrant. That's honeysuckle. That's a perennial. It's going to come back. I know it may look a little rough with some foliage dropping off. I call it semi-deciduous. That is, it'll hold some foliage, but it'll drop some too. Whereas a silver lace vine, a clematis, wisteria, these are all perennials as well, but they truly lose all of their foliage in the winter. They rest underground, and then they're going to come back with fresh new growth, usually in March. You'll see brand new growth coming, and then wisteria starts blooming in April sometime. So just this progression. But plants need to rest. These really fast growers need to rest. Fruit trees, if they didn't get to rest, you would have tiny little putsy apricots, little itty bitty pears. You wouldn't get very many grapes. Berries, you just wouldn't get any. So they need to rest to kind of get their energy back and then take off with new growth again. Pine trees, your evergreens, they're the same way. They grow really fast in spring. They're going to take off here in a couple months. Sometime into February, March, they're going to just ignite with brand new candle growth, this new evergreen. Conifers are things with needles, basically. So these conifers are going to grow, and then you only get one shot at it, and then it starts to solidify. It starts to take that new growth, then it gets thicker. It starts to build up wax over it. So it gets real robust, very drought hardy. It'll take on the heat of summer, and then it just locks in, and that's all you get until the following spring. Right now, they're hibernating, and they're starting to force their new buds or buttons at the very end of their branches from last year. They've got new buttons coming out, and that's going to be the new growth. The bigger you can get that button, or the bigger you can get that new nodule, the more the growth is going to come out. Your fruit trees, the more flower buds, the buds you see up and down that stem, those are flower buds. More than likely, those are flower buds. That's going to be next spring's growth. That's going to be next spring's fruit, whatever that happens to be. So up here in the mountains, we tend to grow apples, pears, apricots, nectarines, cherries, peaches, pluots, and we need late bloomers. So we want things to be late blooming. Fruit trees, if you get a desert variety, it will grow up here, but it blooms too early, and so it's exposed to frost. And so the frost will take the flowers. So if it frosts while that plant is blooming, it's going to not kill the plant. It just takes that flower and doesn't allow it to fruit. Whereas late blooming, we have certain varieties. There's certain varieties of apples that bloom later than others. You want that one. There's certain varieties of apricots that bloom later than others. That's the one you want. And so those are plants that will come out of that dormancy and take off. So perennials come back every year. Annuals just live for 1 year and they're done. So, and it gets kind of tricky for folks. Another one that a lot of folks make mistakes with, these are big in Southern California, your succulents. So succulents there's a huge family of plants. So your grandparents grew hens and chick. That's probably the oldest variety that we have, but we'll sell, 50 varieties here at any given time. The ones we focus in on are perennials, ones that grow here at higher elevation. But so many folks bring their collection from Southern California or that more tropical climates, and then they grow great during the season, but then come winter, they just get vaporized. They turn black, mushy. They just fall over and they die. The Phoenix folks, they bring their cacti out. Or folks in the Midwest. I'm moving to Arizona. I want a saguaro. I'm gonna have a cactus garden. Well, not up here. You're not gonna have very many because there's not many that grow outdoors here. We grow pine trees at this elevation. The true collections of cacti, they're going to start at Black Canyon City and lower, where it's really hot. You can actually see the line as you come up I-17. You can see the line where, oops, too cold. Saguaros no longer grow at this level and beyond. We're at that level and beyond. We're up there. So they're just not going to grow here. But if you were to plant it, it would do fantastic until January. Then it's going to get cold and just die. It's going to turn black, get mushy, fall over, get wilty, and just not come back. And so that's the different. Perennials come back year after year, but they need a rest period. Annuals just bloom their heads off. They're just fantastic, and then they're done. They can't do this anymore, and they have no antifreeze in them. So that's what's happening right now. If you want to maximize the growth, fertilize. Feed your plants of spring. So spring bloomers, lilacs, forsythia, flowering jasmine, I would say wisteria. These are heavy feeders. They need a rest period and they need a lot of food to produce that new flower for next spring. Fertilize them. All of your evergreens. It's going to keep them greener and it's going to maximize that new candle growth next spring. It's going to be a game changer. I know it seems kind of weird fertilizing in spring or in winter. No, it makes a difference. You'll get better growth next spring, especially if you got a new landscape. You just need something bigger. I want that neighbor to be blocked like after next spring's growth, fertilize it. Make a big difference. Use the 744 all-purpose plant food. All right, we'll be right back with more after this. As the days get longer and brighter, houseplants can struggle and scorch, but we have the solution.
At Waters, we've organized our houseplants from A to Z for the brightest of sunny locations, many even bloom.
With experts that know plants and how to make them grow.
Shipments of the freshest houseplants in town have just arrived from A to Z and ready for a bright new home.
Waters Garden Center, where people who love bright green houseplants, they love to shop, found in Prescott.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain and the Top 10 Gardener podcast. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show.
And we are back with Lisa Waters Lain. She comes each week with your garden questions. Just what are your neighbors? What are fellow gardeners? Fellow, is that even it? What are other gardeners talking about? You want to be male, female?
Don't
you
want to offend.
any adjectives that promote anything. So anyway, what are other gardeners talking about? Welcome to the studio, Lisa.
Thank you.
Any great questions going on? And what are people talking about? Some of the gardeners are coming in. The real gardeners are coming in. They're researching what's in. So new potteries here. Trees are starting to show up. A few plants are starting to see some growth. Not a lot. Mainly still winter evergreens.
Yeah.
And lots of new people just going, okay, I know planting season's coming.
Right.
And I want to do my homework. And so they're in just researching what does a juniper look like in the dead of winter.
And it truly is a good time to come in and talk to a garden center, because we're doing stuff, but we'll drop the paintbrush and talk to you about what trees you want, what your garden, what fruit trees are you looking for, when did you start your garden. So this is a great time to come in and talk to people. Because we're like the Maytag repairman. We're just we're looking for something to do.
In the last half of February, it starts to take off.
Yeah.
And then we have less because you're just sheer volume starts to happen. So that nice day and the first daffodils bloom, it's full court press at that point. But now, until then, I want to talk. I'm bored. I don't want to paint another wall, build another table, fix another shade structure.
So come in and see us, definitely. But there are still stuff going out in the garden right now. Our first question is from Janine. She has some type of plant. She thinks it's an agave that really took a beating in that last cold. It's kind of turned brown and mushy. And she wants to know, do you think it will come back, or is it a goner?
Brown and mushy, that's never good for agaves, yuccas, those cacti. My guess is the heart of it froze. Now, you don't truly know until next spring. So I would say
never say that.
Hold off, because plants want to live if you give it even a remote chance. But agaves are a huge family of plants. And my guess is you've got more of one of those desert varieties, like blue agaves, the one they make tequila out of, some of that stuff. We want the Utahensis, the one that grows up in the canyon, the Perryeyes, the one that grows on top of the Bradshaws. These are the super hardy agaves, or century plant would be another name they go by. That's one of that great big flower stalk that just goes to the moon all in one year. That's what we're talking about. And all agaves do that. My guess is, Janine, I hate to tell you this, it's a goner. Just kind of prepare yourself for that. But then leave it until next spring, and you'll know by April 1. You'll know it's either a goner or I can't live with this mush in my bucket. I need a new one. And then come talk to us. We'll help you get the right one, or do your research. Top10plants.com. That's a website we set up all of our inventories right there on our site, or watersgardencenter.com, the shop button at the top. It's there to really research. We just had someone buy a Mugo pine. okay, that's most mugo pines are sold in the garden center, but you research it, tells you how tall it gets here, how wide it gets, how it grows, how much sun, how much wind. We're trying to put that site together. It's not generic. It's put together for our plants and how they grow here at the higher elevations of Arizona. So that's a great resource for you. Anyway, Janine,
Okay.
sorry to tell you that.
Hold out hope.
Yeah.
You never know.
Always hope.
This question is from Allie. She moved from, we'll call it a warmer climate.
Okay. Welcome, California. Don't say California out loud. We love Californians. Come on.
We do. We love them. But she used to plant quite a bit of bare root roses,
Gotcha.
fruit trees, that type of thing. She wants to know, can bare root be planted in this area?
Yeah.
And when would you look to plant it?
So you're seeing bare root show up in January, February. That's when you put it in the ground. So when it's still dormant, you can still do it. Here's the reason we don't sell bare root roses or fruit trees here at Waters Garden Center, is because in an alkaline soil, which we're extremely alkaline, it's really hard to get those roots to start to form and grow. So the loss rate is extreme on bare root. What we do is we plant our bare root fruit trees last year. We're now harvesting those now. So we've had a full year of root growth. And now we're bringing those into the garden center and you can plant that. So you're a year advanced. But the main reason, you have virtually 100% chance of success. Whereas bare root, generally, I would discourage, I would only have neighbors I don't care for plant bare root. But everyone else, all my friends, plant a rooted plant. You have much better success, faster growth, more even. It's just going to be better for you, less frustration. So stay away from bare root.
I would say, just as an aside, Ken and I love all our neighbors.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I don't have any of our neighbors plant bare root. None. They all give advice. I give advice. I go, here, let me help. I'll pick one out for you personally.
Right. Yeah. We love our neighbors. Second thing is, as far as roses, we do get our fiber pot roses, which are they're dormant. The rose itself is dormant, but it has been rooted out in the fiber pot.
Right.
We get those usually about the second week-ish of February.
Day.
Yeah. And those are great to plant because they're usually a little less expensive. Plus, you're getting them in when they're still dormant, so they leaf out at the appropriate time, just less stressful on them. You just have to envision what this rose is going to look like, because it won't look like anything too special.
You do get the new varieties with that, but they're fully rooted. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's not
that's the
bare
most
root.
important
So
thing.
bare root is they rip them out of the ground. They farm them in rows, and they rip them out of the ground. They put them in a bag with some sawdust, and here, you want this?
Right.
And so they just aren't rooted.
Yeah.
And so if you're to take that same bare root at a farm setting, put it in a fiber pot, then root it out for a year, and then bring it to the garden center, now you've got a fully rooted, it will bloom for you this year. Whereas a bare root rose, they just aren't going to bloom that first year. It's really hard on plants.
We are in the mountainous area, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure you get that warranty from that box store, because you're going to need it.
I'll let that one go. The next question is from Chris. He needs to know if he can top a large deodar cedar that is blocking part of his view.
Yeah.
It is now a good time to do that.
So, who's that, Chris? Who's that? Chris. So, Chris, deodar cedar, this is a monster. It's 80 foot. Actually, Lebanese cedar. It's where they grow native. So, this is what they made the Ark of the Covenant out of. It's a famous, famous Old Testament type of tree, fast growing. It's going to eventually get to 200 feet. We just aren't, we've only had some in a few dozen years here. So it's not done. So it's going to be nothing but a struggle for you. If it's blocking your view, I think you just got to make the call, power up the chainsaw, cut it right back to the ground, because you are not, it's going to be a constant thing always for you. It's always going to want to block your view. Yes, you could top it now. This is your best time. It's going to look hideous. Your neighbors will mock you going, what's he doing? He topped it. He didn't plan ahead. Just plant a shorter one. Get a juniper or an Arizona cypress. Put a pine tree. They grow half the size of a deer or cedar. Because if it's blocking your view, it's going to continually want to block your view. I would say that's strategizing your views before you landscape is critical. fact, we got a garden class on that. I think that's the 20th. We got a class on how to landscape. We'll cover there's ways to use plants to accent or frame a view. So I like to use columnar plants like aspens, classic. Put them on either side. Your eye is just drawn from that back patio, just drawn. Go, look, I can see Granite Mountain. There's Thumb Butte, spectacular. I love the sunsets here. We just frame it just like that. But we'd never put, I know it looks innocent when you put a 6-foot deodar or cedar in, but then it quickly turns into this 40, 50, 60, 80-foot giant that blocks your view. I would say you just got the wrong plant in the wrong place. Probably wasn't even you, Chris. I'm not putting you down. It's probably your previous owner of that house put it in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's going to keep blocking your view. It's time to just get it out of there. I hate to tell you that, but it's just a plant. It's not a puppy dog. You're allowed to kind of remodel every once in a while. I go, it's been good for 10 years. Now it's no longer good.
That's true.
All right. So Ken and Lisa Lain, the mountain gardeners. We'll be right back after this. Not everyone can grow wildflowers, but we'll make sure you're not one of them.
At Waters, we know which wildflowers sprout, thrive, and bloom with success.
We're wild about wildflowers with many of our own Arizona blends.
Like our Arizona native mix, butterfly and hummingbird mixes, and all are big, bold, and beautiful.
At Waters, we know wildflowers, and winter's a season to spread new seed.
Waters Garden Center, where people who love their flowers wild, they love to shop for seed.
You're listening to Ken Lain, aka the Top 10 Gardener. Ken can be found throughout the week in Prescott at Waters Family Garden Center. Listen daily as he answers the top 10 questions of the week, streaming on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Garden Show with garden expert Ken Lain. Join the conversation daily as he answers timely garden questions. Email Ken a question directly from your phone to his desktop through the web at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Or visit face-to-face throughout the week where he can be found at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
Every month, I put together a combination of plants that look fabulous together that month. And so January it's obviously going to be far more skewed towards the evergreen things because they just look good, twiggy. So I've cleaned up my Russian sage. But basically they're just twigs growing out of the ground. There's not much salvia or autumn sage. They're just twigs out of the ground. Peonies I cut right back to the ground. All I have are little nubs coming out of the gardens and some little eyes starting to show. They don't look that good. They look, peony look fantastic in May, June, July, but not right now. And so this month, Boxwood is the feature. Oh, it just looks so incredible. So Boxwood look the same year round. They have beautiful, rich, glossy green. I especially personally like the winter gem Boxwood. And a couple of reasons. It's got a thick, waxy leaf, so it makes it very drought hardy or efficient on its water use. Animals don't eat it. It's got a sap that deer, rabbits, they are not going to bother your boxwoods. Boxwoods are these green hedges. Typically, you'll see them in English gardens, like coming up to the front door. They'll line the driveway with them, or around the patio. They look great in containers, around the pool, in glossy, aqua-colored containers. That's where you use those. They're accent pieces, typically a little smaller. We do have 3 or 4 varieties. Some of them get a little bigger. Some of them more pencil-like with a pencil boxwood, but they all grow the same. They're winter evergreen hardy plants. And so they're just super easy to grow. And you don't have to do much with them. There's not a lot of pruning to keep their shapeliness. Maybe give them a haircut, like early spring, and that's all you ever do. They're just so consistent. So that's why I care for them. So I've got them in pots in our back. We have this huge back patio. It's got hot tubs and fire grills and outdoor kitchens and entertainment areas. It's made for bringing family and friends over and just enjoying. Well, it's so big, it's too much hardscape. That is things that don't live in your backyard, like patios and grills and all the things I just said. It needs greenscape, living plants that help it just build it up. And so boxwoods are perfect with that. Another companion that goes with, here's the combo of January. So boxwood, we start with that. That's the feature. It's just easy to grow, winter evergreen plant. Every yard needs at least one. And so it goes with red clusterberry cotoneaster. This is a bigger plant. So boxwoods are typically about knee high. This one's head high. So it's got kind of a bluer foliage instead of bright green, Kelly green. So they go together. Red clusterberry cotoneaster gets a white flower in spring. And then it turns into these clusters of red berries that they have on them right now. And so red clusterberry, I think that's a hardier plant than even red tip photinia, which is the number one seller. Cotoneaster, there's two varieties of native cotoneasters just grow wild here. So it's related to those. So they are tough. They don't get the disease. Animals don't eat them. It's just a good companion plant for January. They go with mint julep, juniper, mint julep juniper. Junipers, this is a female, so it doesn't put the pollen on, but it has this great kind of chest high texture. It's a texture thing. You got a robust, easy to grow, takes the sun, the wind, the brutal soils, and just grows. Well, you don't have to do much. Junipers just grow, but it's a good companion. The companions grow in the same kind of soil. They grow together, but they complement. That's a good companion plant. Arizona cypress, number one. I mean, that's the number one selling big upright. I want screening plant. That's it. I try to get folks to plant more pine trees or spruce, but they keep going back to Arizona cypress just because it grows so fast and so thick, and it's truly a native. But Arizona cypress has more of that blue silvery color to it, and it's a big plant. So you got a head high. You got a 20-footer, a head high, a chest high, a knee high. And then we have Austrian pine. Pine is it's a long needled pine. So we do pine trees better than anyone else in the country. They just naturally grow. We live in some of the biggest ponderosa pine forests, at least, in the world, right here. This is us. Pines love growing here. Well, Austrians are just like a ponderosa, only they hold their foliage right down to the ground. So in a landscape, it's much prettier, much more shapely. A ponderosa, basically what you're planting, you're going to end up with a trunk in the yard. All the foliage is going to be well above your house, way up there, but you get to enjoy this red bark. That's it. Arizona or Austrian pines, so much better. If I'm landscaping a design for you, I'm going to skew you towards this or spec that in. And then we'll end with, for those kind of shaded areas, yews grow in that eastern, in the shaded north side of the house. You need a conifer, an evergreen that just holds its foliage, but it will take that shade as well, and yew will do that. So a summary: boxwood, cotoneaster, junipers, pines, and Arizona cypress all go together and look fantastic in the month of January. Be right back after this.
Hi, Lisa with the plants of the week and our Austrian pine.
We have instantaneous trees just in and ready for planting.
This pine has the same long needles as our ponderosa pine without all the problems, and these trees are really big and bold.
This is the fastest growing of the pines, and lots of sizes to choose from.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, for people who love big, bold pines. They love to shop.
The Top 10 Gardener, your source for timely garden advice, seasonally correct for the garden, guaranteed to make a difference in your yard this season. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
And we are back with Lisa Waters Lain. She comes each week and just shares her garden insight, just what is going on in her gardens and her which top of mind. So you get different gardeners, you get different ideas. Plus, I like sharing microphone time with a pretty gal.
Thank you, dear.
My gal.
Your gal.
You look good.
Thank you.
So what you got? What you thinking about this week?
Well, for us, so for gardeners, especially for nursery owners, spring is like Christmas to us. And
Yeah,
we,
right.
we just get super excited when we know trucks are starting to roll, things are coming in, and we are expecting our first truck of the season to come in, I think next week. I never give an exact date because trucking is one of those.
So many times a truck breaks down in Vegas. I don't know why that is sometimes.
Or you get a snowstorm coming
that's
in.
true.
So there's a lot of things that can affect it. But we're expecting it next week, which means it could be next week or the week after. But hey, it's coming.
Yeah.
And
4 different farms. We've got it hitting 4 different farms up and loading different things. So all kinds of stuff. A mixture of things are coming.
But the main thing I'm excited about is some of the new fruit trees that we have coming in. So fruit trees and those early spring flowering trees will be coming in. And they've really gotten creative with the fruit trees, which is kind of cool because, you've seen one peach tree.
We've sold thousands.
Which is great. Not knocking peach trees. They do wonderful here. But it's kind of fun, the new ones that they're coming up with. So if you're kind of new into this environment, the what do you always call it? The highlands of Arizona? Central Highlands.
Kind of this higher, come up the hill, Cordes Junction, and you go to the right, you got Sedona, Camp Verde, Cottonwood. To the left, you got Prescott Valley, Dewey, Mayer, Humboldt. You got Chino Valley, Paulden, all this whole area. We're all the same zone. We're all the same plants. We're all the same.
And fruit trees do really well in our environment. Some people are surprised at what will grow here. They can't grow citrus, can't grow avocado trees, but we can grow a lot of things, and they do very well. So peaches, plums, nectarines, cherries, pears. What am I missing? Apricots,
almonds, pluots, walnuts.
Yeah. So you got a wide variety of things that can grow up here. So, and what I like about some of these newer trees that we're getting in is that they're kind of combination trees. So we're getting, excuse me. So in the apples, I'm sorry, I got
voice is trying to go, isn't it?
We got some really cool. So a lot of your apple, a lot of fruit trees, so we'll start with that. They need a pollinator. Sometimes you can put just one variety in and it will pollinate and you're fine. But a lot of times they need a partner, and they need a partner that will pollinate with them. Not every apple pollinates every other apple.
Right.
What I love about the combo trees is they're picking varieties that will pollinate each other.
Complement.
So if you have a smaller yard, or maybe you want an apple tree and a cherry tree, but you don't want just one variety, you can get different varieties off of there. They pollinate each other, so you're saving that space. So that's really fun. So the apples, we do get the 3-in-1s, and get 2 different kinds with the apples. Sometimes they'll be grafted onto that main trunk. You'll get 3 or 4 different varieties grafted on. But we also get one they call a clump. So with that one, you're getting 3 separate tree varieties. It's almost like the aspens when the aspens come in the clump.
Aspen. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're getting 3 different varieties that have their own trunks. And we get those as well, which is kind of cool.
And they're all made to pollinate each other. And the other beauty of this is, another name they call these are cocktail trees, because there's a blend of different fruits on the same tree. And so the other beauty of this is they get harvested at different times. So you don't have 8 bushels of Honeycrisp. You've got some Golden Delicious, then the Honeycrisp come off, then it's the Galas, then it's the Black Arkansas, or whatever the combo is. Right. So it takes the pressure off of having to deal with all this fruit all at once. It broadens it out.
Definitely. So the trees that we're getting combo, so apples, definitely. We're getting cherries in the 3-in-1 and 4-in-1, and we're getting pears in the 3-in-1, 4-in-1.
That's good.
So that'll be great. I can't remember if we're getting a peach or not. I'm gonna have to look that up. But we are getting what we call the fruit salad combo. So the fruit salad is it may have a peach, a nectarine, and a plum.
So all
Yeah.
pitted fruits.
All pitted
together.
fruits. Yeah. You're not going to get an apple and a plum or
You can't graft a
Right.
peach onto an apple tree. They're different varieties. It'd be like a cancer. It would eject it.
Mhm.
But you can, a peach and an apricot, they're the same. They're both pitted fruits. Plums, they kind of cross over. So some you can graft and some you
Right.
cannot.
And then we're getting a few of the ones that are they genetic? So like a plum lot, which is a plum and a apricot.
They've grafted an apricot onto a peach rootstock. So they're doing it that way. Still a graft, but they're playing with rootstocks. What varieties go where and how much. Kind of fun. It's
So
new
you're
science,
kind of getting
new
some
fun.
crosses on those. So we're getting a few of those in kind of things as well. So last year we introduced kind of that fruit salad tree, and we didn't know it was going to be so popular.
It was big. We ran out. We tried to get more. We ran out again.
So this year we hopefully brought in a lot, but what I would tell people is do not wait. If this is one you were looking at last year and couldn't get, or you're just thinking, oh, that's kind of a cool idea and I got a spot, don't wait too long because they do go. And like you said, they're not widgets where you can go produce 20 more. What you get for the season kind of is what you get for the season. That's what the farms have grown. So you're not going to get a lot more.
I'd say the average age of these trees coming in, anywhere from 7 to 12 years old. Depending on the size, what bucket size, the trunk. But they were planted, years ago. We just now, they're big enough to harvest or shapely enough to bring them in.
And I would say our trees, we really, the vendors that we do the farming for us, that we buy from, they do an excellent job. You're not going to find a little skinny whip. It's not going to be some tree that you're going to wait 10 years to get fruit off of. You're going to start getting fruit off of these pretty quickly.
First year.
And they're healthy trees. They're well rooted out. They're not going to be bare root. They're well rooted out in their buckets. So those are important things to think about when you're shopping trees.
And make sure the trunk is straight. I mean, trees, if you get an ugly tree, it never gets pretty. It just gets uglier and uglier with age. A beautiful tree up front just gets more and more luscious as it grows. It's the most important thing. You want to make sure you hand pick your trees. Even if you're having another landscaper do the work for you, want to hand pick your tree. Shrubs, less important. Perennial flowers, doesn't even matter. Trees, you need to hand pick those so you get the right ones. And then make sure, if we're talking fruit trees, make sure they're varieties that are high altitude varieties, because you'll see there'll be fruit trees in every box, every grocery store. They'll be everywhere.
True.
Half of them, I would say, half of the trees you find in the marketplace, not here at Waters, we cherry pick the ones that are right for here.
No pun intended.
But you'll see desert varieties. That buyer's going, I got 100 stores, ship 50 of those to all my stores, and they don't care if it's for Flagstaff or Payson or Phoenix, or they're just ordering. They just want to make a sale of a tree. It's just not. I'm embarrassed sometimes, but
okay, honey, get off your soapbox.
On my soapbox.
Climb
Sometimes
down.
the gardening, you're not a bad gardener. You were sold the wrong thing.
Don't fall off your soapbox. The other thing I wanted to mention is we're actually getting a nice selection of dwarf nectarines and dwarf peaches.
Nice.
So in the nectarines, we're getting Arctic Babe and Nectar Babe, which
I like
are really
the word babe in my fruit trees.
And then in peaches, we're getting Garden Gold, Honey Babe, and the Pixie.
Good choices.
So some really nice dwarfs that are coming in. We'll also be getting our early crab apples and red buds and plums, ornamental plums.
Do we get that new flamethrower?
Yes. Which is really a pretty tree. Yeah. So definitely getting the new stuff in. It's a good time to come in and start checking us out.
Spring is right around the corner. The plants are en route. We've actually gotten some trucks already in, so it's kind of exciting time. And you can plant those whenever you're ready. Best to plant them before they wake up, before they leaf out or bloom in spring. You want to get them in the ground. Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners. Be right back after this. As the days get longer and brighter, houseplants can struggle and scorch, but we have the solution.
At Waters, we've organized our houseplants from A to Z for the brightest of sunny locations, many even bloom.
With experts that know plants and how to make them grow.
Shipments of the freshest houseplants in town have just arrived from A to Z and ready for a bright new home.
Waters Garden Center, where people who love bright green houseplants, they love to shop. Found in Prescott.
You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Look for more tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts through Ken's website. Additional shows of this podcast, read his weekly garden column, or follow him on Facebook, Instagram at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show with Ken Lain. Listen to Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts guaranteed to make your gardens more beautiful than ever this year. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So if you have a new landscape going into your yard, you're going to be landscaping or adding substantial or remodeling your landscape this next spring. We're coming into the season where you've got a lot of choices. So right now we've gone from mainly just winter evergreens. We've been planting. We plant year round here. But the winter evergreens there's a lot of selection, a lot of choice. But now we're coming into the fruit trees and the spring blooming shrubs, the spring blooming trees. There's a lot more choices. Perennials will be right after that. Then the veggies and herbs. So there's a ramp up. And so you're coming into that planting season. How do you plant in a 4-season climate? If this is new to you, you're from, let's say, a tropical area, you haven't really seen snow before. Well, this is a 4-season climate. And I use the 20% rule. So 20% of your plant selection should be dedicated to spring bloomers. Just because that's the lilacs, the forsythias, and all the wisterias, the inspiration of spring. And oh my gosh, it's been winter, and now look at that. That's amazing. I can't believe red buds bloom like that. That's crazy. That's beautiful. I want more. 20% should be dedicated to that. 20% should be dedicated to summer bloomers. That's crepe myrtles, the rose of Sharons, even roses are that. So you've got something going on because the spring bloomers are going to bloom and then they're done. They're just green now. So you're left wanting. If you want the bloom cycle to continue, plant some summer blooming things. Fall color. That's your maples and aspens, things that just go, wow, I can't believe a tree could turn that color red. That's amazing. 20% should be winter evergreens. That's what we've come through. If you didn't have enough evergreens in your yard, you kind of felt it. It feels kind of stark out there. What's going on? You didn't have enough green to keep you going. And then the last 20%, so 20% spring, 20% summer, 20% fall, 20% winter. The other 20 is just what tickles your fancy. If this is your summer home and you winter down in Scottsdale, dedicate it to summer. Put more burning bush, put more butterfly bush, put those things in. If this is your winter home, you summer in Alaska, well, focus on the fall and winter stuff. So put it towards, or if you just love spring and I like everything about blooms, focus on spring stuff. That's your plant mix. That's how you'll get that right rotation coming through. Another big mistake, we do a lot of flower beds. We don't do lawns here. We do raised beds. And when you're layering your flowers, go from tall to small. So the backside should be taller flowers, snapdragons. The shorter flowers should be pansies. Also, perennials and annuals. So for me, I love perennials. They're anchors. They come back year after year. Perennials, they just don't bloom as well as annuals do. So I'll fill my taller perennial flowers towards the backside. And there's always something rotating through. A lot of your wild flowers are perennials. They bloom for a while and then they kind of fade. And then something else will come out and bloom. What I do is to have my cake and frosting too, I tend to anchor everything with perennials. They're going to come back every year. They may not bloom quite as well, but I always interject some annual flowers. Nothing blooms like a petunia. Oh my gosh. Geraniums, calipricoa, zinnias, vincas. These are over the top, nonstop, riotous bloom. Nothing can compare to that. So I'll sprinkle some of those in at the front edge of my containers. I put annuals, but I'll have an anchoring big perennial thing there. Excuse me. So that's some flower tricks that kind of work out. Consistency. So you need some color. Everyone wants to go all bloom, but you need some other foliage plants. So here, foliage is as interesting. So Nandina, or heavenly bamboo. It's a great foliage plant. It does have a flower, but it's not that pretty. You're planting this for the foliage. And then the foliage actually ebbs and flows. So right now, mine is bright red. So if Nandina are in the winter or in bright sun, they turn red. Then that red will turn back to green. Euonymus will do that. Cotoneaster will do that. It's fun to play with the foliage piece of those plants. Annuals, perennials, we kind of touched on that. There's a difference, and not just with flowers. Sedums. This is there's hundreds of varieties of sedums, dozens and dozens of varieties of agave, yuccas. Some are annuals. They're not going to winter over up here because of our elevation, and some are perennial. Do your homework on that. Make sure you're checking you're getting the right variety. I see too many mistakes where folks bring their collection from their previous home in Palm Springs. They come up here and it dies in the winter. Red fountain grass. Frequently people go, I love it. I've grown it for years. I always have it. And then it doesn't come back in the winter. Here at this elevation, it's an annual, not a perennial. Everywhere else in the country, it's lower elevations, it's a perennial, comes back. So, but not up here. And then hardscape and greenscape. Those are two terms you'll hear often in landscaping. Hardscape is non-living landscape pieces. So your patio, your fences, your barbecue grill, your statuary, the pond, these are all arbors, pergolas. These are all hardscape. And then greenscape are all the plants. So trees, shrubs, grass, flower beds. And the secret is 60%. You get this right and it will feel balanced and just beautifully. It will feel right. You can't put your finger on it, but you go, this just feels right. 60% green plants should be covering your plot of land. So that's sounds like a lot, but a tree takes up a huge area. So, but 60, you get that right and it will feel right. If you get too many plants, you go to 70, 80% plants to your plot plan, it's going to feel overgrown. You know, oh, what? They didn't know when to stop. Oh my gosh. If you get too little, a rock, a boulder, sling some crushed granite around and one tree, it's going to feel like you're wanting. Like, what? Is this a rental? Did they run out of money? What happened? They got $1 million house and no plants. What's going on? It feels lunar. It feels dusty, feels dirty, feels like incomplete. So 60% is that marker. So when we're designing landscapes, we're trying to go 60%. We're thinking mature size of that tree or that hedgerow or that screening plant or we're framing a vista. But we want 70% green plants to that space around you. So that'll be a real helpful percentage for you. Play with textures. One that I don't think we use often enough, but just loves growing up here at the higher elevations, grasses. We have so many native grasses that grow here. Down in the desert, they have cacti. Up here, we've got grasses and yuccas. So we do better with those than anything else. I love grass because it adds motion, it adds drama, adds texture. It always adds something to look at, even in the slightest of breeze. We're most famous for our pampas grass. That's a great big one. It gets these huge plumes. It gets head high or taller, and the plumes are above that. But there's so many varieties, and they all do well here. I think fruit trees, they all do well here. So fruit's kind of nice. It's got a spring bloom. It's got summer foliage. It's got fall color. And you get an ornamental fruit on it. It kind of has a lot of different of these design elements all wrapped up into so many. The other one that really is tricky for my Midwestern folks, sun. The sun is more intense here. This elevation is brighter. So you're used to growing, let's say, Japanese maple out in full sun. Here in the mountains of Arizona at this elevation, they're not going to like that. I know the tag says it grows in full sun, but oh, you really ought to have some protection that mid-June, 10 to 2. It's not going to like growing there. More shaded, east side, under the canopy of another tree. That's where they're going to thrive. And so geraniums, I know the tag says blooms in full sun, and it will grow in full sun, but it just doesn't bloom very long. It blooms longer, better, stronger when it has a little bit of that mid-afternoon shade to it. So you'll play around. We call this gardening, getting familiar with where your things are at, but do that kind of homework. Check top10plants.com. That's our plants are located there, and we describe how they grow here, how much sun for here, how big they're going to get here, not nationally. Okay, gotta go after this break. Be right back with more. Don't go anywhere right after this. Not everyone can grow wildflowers, but we'll make sure you're not one of them.
At Waters, we know which wildflowers sprout, thrive, and bloom with success.
We're wild about wildflowers with many of our own Arizona blends.
Like our Arizona native mix, butterfly and hummingbird mixes, and all are big, bold, and beautiful.
At Waters, we know wildflowers, and winter's a season to spread new seed.
Waters Garden Center, where people who love their flowers wild, they love to shop for seed.
You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain. He can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Thanks for tuning in to the Top 10 Garden Show. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
Over the holidays, lots of eggnog, lots of turkey, lots of family, lots of kids, lots of relaxation. Not as much garden time outdoors. A few hikes around, did a little camping over near Parker, Arizona, did some of that. It was nice. But I just feel better when I'm out in the landscape playing with plants. And I got to thinking, why is that? Here I'm planting a hedgerow in January. That's a sign of a gardener if ever you heard one. So it's beautiful. It looks great. It's evergreen. And when I got all done, I went, wow, got my hands dirty. I'm playing with worms, trying to save them because they're my planting hole. Well, I don't want to hurt you. I know if you split them in two, they divide, but I don't want to. I want to keep you whole right over here. Here you go, nursing around. The Scotty's with me outdoors. Kind of go, hey, what hole we digging? This is great. Should I bring something to help you? So they're out there enjoying it with you as well. You've got plants they're a living, breathing thing out there. Even though they're growing slowly, they're still living, breathing in your landscape. And it just feels good when you're pruning, cleaning things up, when you're planting something new. Pansies they're in bloom. They're winter blooming. My winter blooming jasmine's heavily budded. It's kind of head faking me. So I'm going, I'm going to bloom. Wait a minute. I'll wait till the next warm cycle. Then I'll bloom. It's getting ready. Camellias, buds are huge. Lilacs, buds are huge. It's inspiring. So you're nursing. I think it's something to care for. And houseplants can do this some too, but out in the landscape, in the yard, it's fresh air and birds and waterfalls. And it's on a grander scale, I think. So I think it keeps you young. I think it keeps your mind young. I think it keeps your body moving. My boy's a PA. He's an Army captain in Fort Sam Houston. So if you folks that are in the Army, you know where that is. But he goes, motion is lotion. Keep moving and it keeps you going. You won't get so. I'm trying to I need more lotion. As I get older, had a couple back surgeries, but I keep moving. And it keeps me going, keeps me young. Keeps your brain going because I planted 3 icy blue Arizona cypress. These are brand new introductions. You've never seen them before, but we're going to have 3 of them down this property line. And they are spectacular already. Once they fill in, they'll be glorious. So you nurse these along. I'll fertilize them, keep them going. I care for them. It's not quite like, when you get all done throwing the ball for the Scotty or swim, just whatever you're doing with your dogs or cat coming in the morning and laying on your lap going, hey, I need some me time. That's cats always thinking me time. Dogs are going, I need some you time. It's not quite that, but it does make you feel better. Well, that's it for this show. Class is coming up. We've got how to grow wildflowers next week. We've got how to prepare your soil, how to grow better fruit trees. Take a look at those at watersgardencenter.com. Take a look and join us. They're free every Saturday at 9:30 here at Waters Garden Center.
Hi, Lisa with the plants of the week and our Austrian pine.
We have instantaneous trees just in and ready for planting.
This pine has the same long needles as our ponderosa pine without all the problems, and these trees are really big and bold.
This is the fastest growing of the pines, and lots of sizes to choose from.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott. For people who love big, bold pines, they love to shop.
If you want a more fruitful garden, increased success in landscape that just feels better, then tune in daily to the Top 10 Garden Podcast. Years of tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts are guaranteed to make your gardens nicer than ever. Listen to this podcast or read Ken's weekly garden column by visiting watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Thanks for tuning in.